What up, people of the House of the Dragon Fire and Blood world? We have exciting news ahead, obviously, because tomorrow it starts, and I am so excited, and I am so ready to go. I got my Shocker Shore beer. I'm gonna be consuming some nicotine throughout this video, so just be prepared. But anyways, guys, welcome to Dance of the Dragons Geography Part 2. The sources you can find of the research I did will be in the link. Make sure to check those out. I want to make sure people are getting the right credit. Of course, I used all the books, and this video will contain Season 2 and some Season 3 spoilers. Potentially Season 3 is a little harder to predict. And this is a video of a part 2, and will highlight the geography of the Vale of Arryn, the North, the Iron Islands, and even the free cities in Essos, better known as the Triarchy. But let's get into it. So, the video breakdown, guys. The video will be comprised of a breakdown of each kingdom and the major houses, overview of the kingdom's geography during the beginning of the dance, specifically at the end of episode 2. This is what I based the map off of. So this is where I think we'll be at the end of episode 2. It's who controls more land, soldiers, and or population of that kingdom, why each house chose the side they chose, the army size roughly, populations roughly, resources and how strong each military is, and of course a fun fact about each house. So let's get into the Vale of Arryn, everyone. So as you can see, the Vale of Arryn has about a population of 4 million, total army size around 35,000. Their largest city, which I did not label, and I'll get into that why, is Goldtown, and the wealthiest cities are the Eyrie and Goldtown. So the Vale of Arryn will entirely side with Rhaenyra and the Blacks. Rhaenyra's mother, Emma Arryn, was an Arryn from her father's side, and actually a Targaryen on her mother's side. Her mother was Daella Targaryen, which was one of the daughters of Jaehaerys the Conciliator, which again we see at the beginning of episode 1, season 1. But in the show, it is possible they switch things up and have the Royces side with the Greens due to the internal conflict with Rhea, Royce, and Daemon. We do see that in the books as well, but they really highlighted it in the show. So I could see that happening in the show, as in them siding with the Greens. But for the map, I played it conservatively and kept them Team Black. And also a fun fact for you, which I think is pretty interesting. Took some soul searching on this one, guys. Both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon start the show off and the conflict off with the death of an Arryn. Jon in Game of Thrones, Emma in House of the Dragon. This could represent some form of symbolism here, since Arryns typically represent honor, loyalty, and stability, and are considered the most Andal of all Westerosi because they were the first invaded by the Westeros. The death of honor, loyalty, and stability does tend to lead to chaos, so I do think there is some symbolism there. The Arryns and the Lords of the Vale will officially side with the Blacks when Jace visits the Eyrie and speaks to Jane Arryn, who's technically his cousin, and convinces them to join their side. And I'll have various quotes on that later on. The Eyrie has roughly the same population and soldiers as the Riverlands, and is roughly the same size as the Riverlands. Also, I'm not including the Grafton's of Goldtown, even though they are the largest city in the area, because they're just not very significant. But again, they do wield a fairly large army size, so in that sense they are, but you won't really hear about them at all in the dance whatsoever. So let's get into the houses. They're all black houses. They all side with Rhaenyra. So the first is, of course, the Arryns of the Vale, which has a population of around 400,000 and can wield about 4,000 soldiers. So the Arryns chose the Blacks, in my opinion, for 3 primary reasons. The first reason can be demonstrated with this Fire and Blood quote from page 399. Nor could House Arryn be relied upon, for the Eyrie was presently ruled by a woman, Lady Jane, the Maiden of the Vale, whose own rights might be called into question should Princess Rhaenyra be put aside. This quote is highlighting how Lady Jane felt that she had no choice but to side with the female claimant, or her own rights may be thrown away. Seems pretty logical to me. Secondly, the Arryns, tend to be loyal and true to their word, as I have previously mentioned. So it does not surprise me that they stay true to their word. Again, they're kind of like the Starks in that sense. Thirdly, Rhaenyra is part Arryn, hence her courtal sigil with the Arryn sigil, which you can actually see in the bottom right of the screen, Rhaenyra's sigil. And again, here's not again. But here's a quote from page 415 in Fire and Blood when Lady Jane officially sides with the Blacks. Thrice have my own kin sought to replace me, Lady Jane told Prince Jacaerys. Remember, Jace will be in the Eyrie. My cousin Sir Arnold is wont to say that women are too soft to rule. I have him in one of my sky cells, if you would like to ask him. Your Prince Daemon used his first wife most cruelly, it is true, but notwithstanding your mother's poor taste in consorts, she remains our rightful queen, and mine own blood besides, and Arryn on her mother's side. In this world of men, we women must band together. The Val and its knights shall stand for her, if her grace will grant me one request. So here's where it gets interesting, guys. When the prince asked what that might be, she answered, Dragons, I have no fear of armies. Many and more have broken themselves against my bloody gate, and the Eyrie is known to be impregnable. But you have descended upon us in the sky as Queen Visenya once did during the conquest, and I was powerless held to you. I mislike feeling powerless. Send me dragon riders. What's cool about this is this will lead to Rhaenyra sending her son, her third youngest son, because she has two youngest sons now, Joffrey, to the Vale with Tyraxes, his dragon, and Rhaena with her dragon egg, which will become a dragon. Not going to spoil that. The Vale was the first place the Andals invaded when they came over from northwest Essos and invaded Westeros 4,000 years before the conquest. So that is the fun fact about the Vale of Arryn. And here's one more quote on page 415 that infers that all of the lords of the Vale sided with the blacks, and so the prince agreed. Referring to send Joffrey and Rhaena to the Vale, and Lady Jane knelt before him and bade her warriors to kneel, and all swore him their swords. We can assume the all refers to all the lords of the Vale. This is at least the assumption I am making. And again, guys, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure I've already said this in my other video. There will be spoilers of season 2 and some potential season 3 spoilers. I just want to continue to remind people. But let's move on to the lesser lords of the Vale of Arryn. The Waxleys, which you can see are just south of that blue falcon of House Eyrie. They are the furthest southernmost house in the Vale of Arryn. They're actually pretty wealthy because they produce wax candles that for basically all of Westeros. So they're a pretty wealthy house in this region, probably right behind the Eyrie and Goldtown. And again, they're very loyal to the Arryns. Moving on to the Royces, which is in the furthest east, most east point of the Vale of Arryn, as you can see with the bronze background and the black dots. They are first men, but again, we could see a change here in the show since we see Daemon kill Lady Royce in episode 5 of season 1. So that is a potential thing they switch up, but I am unlikely. I think they'll still stay Team Black, but again, I could be incorrect on this one for sure. Moving on, we have the Hunters, which are the Hunters of Longbow Hall. They're just next to the Vale of Arryn, and they have the arrow sigil, the many arrow sigil. Again, they're located about 200 miles northeast of the Eyrie. They are known for their impressive hunting abilities, and actually King Jaehaerys I visited Longbow Hall on one of his royal progresses in 52 AC, so about 80 years before the dance. Moving on, we have the Corbrays of Heartsholme. They have the white backgrounded sigil with the 3 birds and the hearts. Heartsholme makes sense. They're one of the stronger houses in the Vale, along with one of the bigger and more loyal houses to the Arryns. They wield a relatively big army size, as you can see, compared to the other houses. They're located about 100 miles northeast of the Arryns. And this will be a later spoiler, but Rhaena, this is going to be, I think they're the only season 4 spoiler I have here, guys, so I apologize. But Rhaena, daughter of Daemon and Laena, will wed Corwyn Corbray, and we may see this towards the end of the show. So actually, Rhaena will, in the books, does wed a Corbray, and I think they'll keep that similar in the show, hopefully. But anyways, we have the Belmores of Strong Song. They have the purple sigil with like the bell, the many bells, the 6 bells, and they're considered one of the more powerful military houses in the Vale with the Royces and Corbrays, excuse me, guys. And they're the furthest west house in this region, as well as the and further fun fact, which I think was kind of cool, as well as members of House Balmore, like House Tully, tend to have red auburn hair. So members of this house kind of look like Tullys. We have the Sunderlands of the Three Sisters. As you can see, those three islands with the Three Sisters in the green and blue background on their sigil. Again, they have a pretty average population size for the Vale and a pretty average military size. The three islands are ruled by the Sunderlands. The capital, per se, of the island is Sisterton. From left to right, west to east, you have Long Sister, Sweet Sister, and Little Sister. The Borels are the second most significant house on the island, and they are the head of Sisterton, the main city. However, the Sunderlands have the final rule over all three islands. They are a strategic location for the Arryns since they have islands and they're between the north and the Vale, as well as they can, if you move westward, you can get to the Twins and the Riverlands. On page 415, after Jace leaves the Eyrie, it reads, "Then on Jacaerys' sword, north across the fingers, and the waters of the Bight. He lighted briefly at Sisterton, where Lord Borel and Lord Sunderland did obeisance to him, and pledged him the support of the Three Sisters. During the conquest, the Three Sisters rebelled against the Arryns and declared themselves an independent kingdom. Let's just say Visenya and Vhagar crushed that pretty quickly, so that was the fun fact for them. But I think you actually might hear about them in the show. They definitely could be like a house actually spoken about. Let's move on now to the cold waters of Coldwater Burn, which has the red, blue, and white sigil with that tree, that blue tree looking thing. I don't exactly know how to describe it. Like the Royces, they are also first men. And Coldwater is about 200 miles northeast of the area, as you can see on the map. They are pledged to the Royces and have close ties to them, so maybe they will also side with the Greens in the show, and I might be wrong on this, so maybe we might see a little bit more of a civil war than I think in the Vale, but I don't know, I'm skeptical. And for the fun fact, during the coming of the Andals to the Vale, they allied with King Robar II Royce against the invading Andals. Robar's forces were defeated in the Battle of the Seven Stars, however, and the Cold War submitted to Artis the First Arryn, the new king of the Mountain and Vale. So that's basically just saying when the Arryns took over the Vale. We have finally the Linderleys of Snakewood, which is obviously the green and black sigil with the many green snakes. They are sworn directly to the Arryns and are located about 200 miles directly east and slightly north of the Arryns. They are located in a forest like the Mertens of Mistwood, so they are also kind of a foresty home. All right, that is the Vale of Arryn. So let's move on to the north. The north. Okay, so I included a lot of houses here. I basically included all of the major houses in the north. You can see they have a pretty much significantly smaller army than the Val as well as population. Their largest cities are White Harbor and Winterfell, and their wealthiest city is probably White Harbor. So the north will side entirely with the Blacks and Rhaenyra when Jace makes the Pact of Ice and Fire with Craig and Stark. I'll get into that in a little bit. I'm going to have a beer break real quick. I love German beer, guys. The Pact of Ice and Fire was a pact that agreed that the firstborn daughter of Prince Jacaerys, which, guys, we will see this. This is definitely going to happen, would marry Lord Cregan's son and heir Rickon. So basically, Jace's first daughter would go out to Winterfell and like marry Cregan's son, and then they can like make dragon babies, ice and fire babies. All right, so the Pact of Ice and Fire was essentially a preemptive literary clue precursor to Jon Snow. I think they're going to hint at that in the show. Who, yes, will also be the prince that was promised in the books too. That is my understanding. That is my prediction. What will happen in Dance of the Dragons, as in the last book. The North won't be really a huge factor early in the war. I don't even think you're going to like see them in war until maybe the end of season 2, and it won't even be their whole army, and I'll explain that later. Other than the Winter Wolves of House Dustin. House Dustin is that yellow sigil that you see just south of the Stark sigil. It's the only yellow sigil in the North, so that's House Dustin. They will be significant, so pay attention to them. I will assess that later on in this section. And the North is so vast that it takes them such a long time to gather their troops together and get organized. I didn't do a totally great job at depicting this on the map, but basically the North is like the size of the other 7 kingdoms put together, so it's huge. And the vassal lords in the North are probably the most loyal to the Starks than any other kingdom, so it does not surprise me that when Cregan sides with the Blacks, all of the Northern lords do. The Boltons are really the only one that cause some problems, and honestly, they won't in this war. And honestly, guys, this might be the only section where the numbers will actually almost entirely add up because I essentially included every single house in the north. So that's fun. All right, let's get into again, all the houses will be black houses. So the Reeds of Greywater Watch, pretty significant. They have a small population, small army size because they live in a swamp. Fun fact, guys, I'm from Chicago, and Chicago used to be a swamp before Americans came over here in like in the 1600s. It was like a swamp. Fun fact, like wild onions would grow from there. Anyways, let's get back to Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. The Reeds are a very loyal house to the Starks and live in one of the worst areas of Westeros, in my opinion. It is essentially a cold, gross swamp. So it's like a cold swamp. It's like not even warm. They are essentially the entrance to the north and the southernmost house in the north, and they rule what's called the Kragan men, small men who live in swamps and marshes of the neck. Although the Cranigan men do not join Robb Stark's army in the War of the Five Kings, they are instructed to protect the neck if the Lannisters try to invade the north via the causeway. So Robb actually leaves the Reeds in Greywater Watch to protect the north, but then the Iron Islands kind of just skirt that. They figure it out. But let's move on to the Manderleys, which have a massive population, can wield a ton of soldiers, are the wealthiest city in this area, and probably the biggest city in the north. They're the fifth largest city in Westeros, I believe. The Manderleys are also extremely loyal to the Starks because the Starks let them move up north in their kingdom when the Gardeners kicked them out of the Reach hundreds of years before this area. Remember, the Gardeners ruled the Reach before the Tyrells did, before Aegon's conquest. They originate from Dustinbury in the Reach, somewhere on or near the Mander of Highgarden. The Manderleys are a very wealthy house again due to their seat of White Harbor, originally called the Wolf's Den before they moved there. It is the fifth largest city, so I was correct, in Westeros, and is a major city in the north due to its being a port city, so it's wealthy. They are located just off the Bight and one of the main rivers in the north, the White Knife, and they are the sigil with the mermaid just northeast of the alligator sigil of the Reeds of the Grey Water Watch, excuse me. But a lot of trade and commerce goes through White Harbor. And they have a large population, a large military, which I've said again, but honestly, I think they're bigger than the Starks. On page 415 and 416 in Fire and Blood, it reads, Jace then flew on to White Harbor, where Lord Desmond Manderley met with him in his merman's court. Kind of cool. Here the prince faced a shudder bargainer. White Harbor is not unsympathetic to your mother's plight, Manderley declared. My own forebears were despoiled of their birthright when our enemies drove us into exile on these cold northern shores. When the old king visited us so long ago, he spoke of the wrong that had been done to us and promised redress. In pledge of that, his grace offered the hand of his daughter, Princess Visera, to my great grandsire, that our two houses might be made as one. But the girl died and the promise was forgotten. Prince Jace knew what he was being asked of him. Before he left White Harbor, a compact was drawn up and signed, by the terms of which Lord Manderley's youngest daughter would be wed to Prince's brother Joffrey once this war was over. So we might see this still. So Prince Joffrey might be like have to marry a Manderley and they make a pact. I don't know if they're gonna do that. To the casual fan, it might get a little, too into the weeds. But anyways, we're gonna go to the Hornwoods of Hornwood. They have the orange background sigil with the moose. They're kind of located in the center of the north. Very strongly loyal house to the Starks in the Battle of Bastards in the show. They actually the Hornwoods side with Jon. Quick little fun fact for you. Um, so their castle is located in the Hornwood Forest between White Harbor and Winterfell. They are considered to be one of the more ferocious warriors even in the north, and their words are righteous in wrath. So it says something right there for you. All right, we're about 20 minutes into this video. I'm going to have a quick beer break, guys. Let's go to the Starks, the main house. So again, the Starks are probably a little bit smaller and wield a smaller army than the Manderleys just because of population. Um, But again, the Starks will side with the Blacks when Jason Cregan create the Pact of Ice and Fire. Guarantee the Pact of Ice and Fire is said multiple times in that when Jace goes up there. And I'll paraphrase a bit from page 416. But when Cregan is first discussed in detail, it is uh, discussed how his uncle Bernard, who was Cregan's regent, ruled from 121 to 124 AC, so about 5 years, 8 to 5 years before the dance started, until Cregan became of age. In 126, Cregan overthrows his power-hungry uncle and claims the north for himself. So his uncle was like regent but wouldn't let go of power. This is important because Cregan relates to Rhaenyra's plight about being usurped, just like how the Manderleys of White Harbor did, and is one of the reasons he and the entire North will side with the Blacks. On page 416 and 417 in Fire and Blood it reads, Cregan and Jacaerys took a liking to each other, for the boy prince reminded the Lord of Winterfell of his younger brother, who had died 10 years before. They drank together, hunted together, trained together, and swore an oath of brotherhood, sealed in blood. In the show, they will most likely highlight this strong friendship as well. It goes on after that and discusses some rumors about Jace having a secret marriage to Cregan's bastard sister, Sarah Snow. I don't think they're going to do that in the show, but basically, Jace apparently is like hooking up with Cregan's like bastard sister. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen though in the show, to be honest, guys. Again, on page 417 to 418, it reads, This we do know. Cregan Stark and Jace Velaryon reached an accord and signed and sealed the agreement. The Grand Maester Munkin calls the Pact of Ice and Fire in this true telling. Like many such pacts, it was to be sealed with a marriage. Lord Cregan's son Rickon was a year old. Prince Jace was as yet unmarried and childless. At this point, he's not betrothed to Bela, but he will be. But as it was assumed, he would sire children of his own once his mother sat on the Iron Throne. The prince's firstborn daughter would be sent north at the age of 7 to be fostered at Winterfell until such time as she was old enough to marry Lord Cregan's heir. So that is essentially the ice act of ice and fire, that they're going to prelude that to Jon. Obviously, that's pretty obvious. Finally, as the fun fact for the Starks, I had to include this tidbit for Mushroom's version of the story. So Mushroom, again, is the small person. I don't want to be offensive. That basically is in the books, but not in the shows. And he's like Rhaenyra's like jester. On page 417, Mushroom also claims that Vermax, Jace's dragon, left a clutch of dragon eggs at Winterfell, which is equally absurd. Whilst it is true that determining the sex of a living dragon is nigh impossible task, no other source mentions Vermax producing so much as a single egg, so it must be assumed that he was male. Septon's Barth's speculation that the dragon changed sex as they need, being as mutable as flame, is too ludicrous to consider. But this quote is interesting because, in a sense, it confirms only female dragons can have hatchlings. Again, this is based off of what we're saying in the Maester, so we have no definitive way of being able to tell if that's true or not. But they might do the 3 eggs. We see the 3 eggs in the trailer, so I don't know where that's going to be. It could be in Winterfell, but I don't really totally get that. So let's see. I'm not going to make a prediction there. Let's see where that goes. All right, guys, we're on the Boltons of Dreadfort. So pretty big army, pretty big population. They have the Flayed Man right next to the Winter Wolf, as you can see the Starks. The red on red. They're one of the more hostile houses towards the Starks, which we probably all know. They are considered the top rivals for hundreds and thousands of years they fought. The Starks ended up winning and ruling over the entire North. Thousands of years ago, the Dreadfort rose in an unsuccessful rebellion with the Grey Starks of the Wolf's Den against the Starks. The Boltons survived the rebellion, although the Grey Starks did not. However, we can assume they sided with the Blacks because it is said nowhere that the Boltons gave any trouble to siding with the Blacks or siding with Cregan. Moving on, we got the Karstarks, which is just east of the Boltons. They have the black background with the white sun. They're one of the probably the most loyal houses of the Starks, with the Hornwoods and probably the Mormonts as well. They sided with the Blacks. Obviously, they were founded as a cadet branch of their overlords, the Starks of Winterfell, and among their principal bannermen, their blazon is that white sunburst on black, and their motto is the Son of Winter. I kind of have a theory around that real quick. It's basically because they're the furthest eastmost house in the north, and so they get the sun first. I don't even know if that makes sense, but that's what I'm guessing. Potentially because they are the farthest eastern house. Again, said that. The Karstarks descend from Carlin Stark, a younger son of Winterfell, possibly around 700 years before conquest, Carlin put down a rebel lord and was granted lands for his valor. The castle he built near the Grey Cliffs was named Carlshold, but that soon became Carhold. And over the centuries, the Carhold Starks became Karstarks. So that is fun. We got the Umbers after this quick beer break, guys. So the Umbers are another historic and old house. They rule Last Hearth. They're the northernmost house that's significant. There's some other smaller houses, but they are that red background right above the Bolton's background with the angry giant man. And again, they're the furthest house north on the mainland. Technically, the Mormonts are further north. Let's just south of the New Gift, which the New Gift is Queen Alysanne extended the lands of the Night's Watch in 58 AC when she visited the north. So I won't get too into that, but basically Queen Alysanne, who's Jaehaerys' wife, the grandmother of Viserys and the great grandmother of Rhaenyra, basically extended the Night's Watch land. Although the Umbers deny it, Roose Bolton claims that they still practice the tradition of the Lord's right to the first night. So this is pretty messed up, guys, which was banned during the reign of King Jaehaerys the First Targaryen. The Lord's right to the first night was a messed up custom, to say the least, practiced in the North. The custom states that when small folk marry, their lord or king has the privilege to bed the bride on the first night. So it's pretty SA, if you know what I mean. It's pretty messed up stuff. But continuing on, we got the Mormonts, which are the island in the very far left of your screen with the bear. It's called Bear Island. They're badasses. Another house very loyal to the Starks. They are the only northern house on an island, and technically, again, are further north than the Umbers, but again, not mainland. According to Northern histories, Roderick Stark, a king in the north, gave Bear Island to the Mormonts after winning the isle in a wrestling match from a Driftwood king of the Ironborn. They also have a Valyrian steel sword, Longclaw, which we all see in the show, and um, I don't think they're going to be a huge factor in the show. We got the Glovers, which have the red background and the big hand that kind of looks like this. The Glovers are a house in the far northwest north, buried inside the Wolf's Wood. So they're actually in the Wolf's Wood. They again won't be too significant during the war, but when Queen Alysanne visited the Wall in 58 AC and extended the size of the Night's Watch, the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch was Benton Glover. So it was a Glover when Queen Alysanne extended the lands of the Night's Watch. Again, that was 58 AC, about 80-ish years before the Dance of the Dragons. We have the Serwins of Serwyn, which they have the white background with the black axe. They're the closest house to the Starks geographically in Winterfell. Lord Serwyn is believed to be one of the closest friends of Cregan Stark, so they were one of the first houses that sided with the Blacks in the north. During the Hour of the Wolf, you will see Lord Serwyn in the show, for sure, alongside Cregan. This will be season 4, though, so I won't spoil that. I'll just say what the Hour of the Wolf is, and if you want to look it up, you can. Lord Robard Serwyn will marry Cregan's granddaughter, Argilac Stark, about 30 to 40 years after the dance. So the Serwyns and Starks are very close. We got the Dustins of Barrowtown. Okay, guys, as you can see, at the red stars, because honestly, they're super freaking important. They're like a weirdly random important house. Besides the Starks and Manderleys, the Dustins, maybe even ahead of the Manderleys, are the most significant house during the dance. To set this up, during the Great Council of 101 AC, House Dustin actually supported the claim of Rhaenys over Viserys. Then, when Jace and Cregan agreed, the Dustins got on board with the Blacks. Since the Dustins are so far south compared to most of the northern houses, you can see again, they're the yellow background with the 2 axes. So they're one of the more further south houses, and they don't have that many people. They could gather their forces much faster than the rest of the north. So they just gathered their forces quicker. Barrowtown again is between Winterfell and the Twins and is in the Riverlands, so it's kind of right in the middle of those. On page 438 in Fire and Blood, we see a precursor quote after Aegon II is severely injured after the Battle of Rook's Rest, which we will see in season 2, episode 4. And Aemond is the new Lord Protector, so that's a spoiler, but that's a season 2 spoiler, guys. I mean, come on, we all saw that coming. Aemond is going to be, once Aegon gets really hurt and is out of it, Aemond kind of becomes the new king, but he calls himself Lord Protector, which is so freaking badass. Meanwhile, so this is the quote again. This is from 438. Meanwhile, the seeds Jace had planted on his Flight north had begun to bear fruit, and men were gathering at White Harbor, Winterfell, Barrowtown, Sisterton, Goldtown, and the Gates of the Moon. So we probably won't even see the Northern and Val Lords preparing for war until like mid-season 2. We even see that. However, we'll see the Winter Wolves of Barrowtown come down south in early season 3. So like again, we won't even really see any Northern Lords like even in the south until probably like end of season 3, where we'll literally see the Winter Wolves, the Dustins of Barrowtown. It's like 2,000 soldiers just go down and ravish, and they really help out Rhaenyra's cause. Then later on, after Aemon had captured Harrenhal and Rhaenyra has captured King's Landing, fighting continues in the Riverlands. It reads on page 462. So again, this would probably be early season 3, guys. Maybe late season 2. Roddy the Ruin and his Winter Wolves had joined with Forrest Frey, Lord of the Crossing, and Red Rob Rivers, known as the Bowmen of Raventree. The Northmen numbered 2,000. Frey commanded 200 knights and thrice as many foot. Rivers brought 300 archers to Frey. This is essentially describing the pre-battle of the battle by the lakeshore near Harrenhal, which we might see again, end of season 2, beginning of season 3, where Lord Lefford of the Golden Tooth in the Westerlands and the rest of the Lannister forces are destroyed. So again, you might not even see the Dustins until early season 3, but they will be a huge, huge factor in supporting Rhaenyra's claim before the rest of the Northernmen come. So again, very significant. Got 2 quick houses here. We got the Risewells of the Rills, not a very significant house in the north and is one of the newer northern houses, younger ones. They will side with the Blacks, however. Lord Bethany Risewell is the second wife of Lord Roose Bolton in Game of Thrones. And then we have the Flints of Flint Fingers, which is just below the Risewell's logo, or sigil, excuse me, I said it was called logo, which is the black and white logo just under the horse sigil. I keep, God, stop calling that, Henry. But they are a smaller house in southwest north. However, they most likely will join the Dustins and some of the Winter Wolves. And actually, Timothy, I think it's pronounced Timothy Snow, the bastard of Flint's Fingers, will start an Esso's mercenary group after the Dance of the Dragons. Some of the surviving Northernmen had lost everything after the dance and decided to start a group, mercenary group in Essos. So that's kind of a fun fact for you. After the dance, like a bunch of Northerners just like go to Essos and start like mercenary groups, which is kind of crazy. But let's get to the Iron Islands, guys. Okay, as you can see, the Iron Islands are very small, about a population of 1 million, the smallest kingdom by size and by population, small army size. Largest cities are Pike, the capital, Harlaw, Hammerhorn. The wealthiest city is probably Hammerhorn, though. So I did make an error on this kingdom, so my bad, guys. Pike is the island west of where it is labeled. I labeled Harlaw Pike. Pike is actually further west, so my bad, guys. I messed that one up. For the Iron Islands and Dorne, I will really only be covering their general locations of each house, besides Houses Greyjoy and Houses Martell, which are the liege lords of the 2 areas. Because honestly, out of these 2 kingdoms, you will really only see or hear about the Greyjoys and the Martells. The Greyjoys and the Iron Islands will probably not be seen in season 2. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but most likely talked about. They must be talked about. The Greyjoys will side with the Blacks eventually, but it'll be a long road before they do. Dalton Greyjoy, who's a savage, crazy guy, the Red Kraken, kind of a sick name, will be a significant character in season 3 and season 4. And maybe you will see him at the end of season 2, but it does not seem likely to me. In fact, the Iron Islands not siding with the Greens could be one of the reasons we see in early season 2 as to why Otto is removed his hand, and I'll talk about that more in the Dorne and Triarchy sections later on as well. And again, Otto being removed his hand, I'm going to keep on repeating this in the last like 10 minutes of this video. That's a very significant thing that happens, and I'll explain why later. It reads on page 399 in Fire and Blood. To take Sir Hyland's place as master of ships, so this is right after the Green Council, Sir Otto looked to the Iron Islands, dispatching a raven to Dalton Greyjoy, the Red Kraken, the daring and bloodthirsty 16-year-old Lord Reaper of Pike, offering him the admiralty and a seat on the council for his allegiance. This would be early on in season 2, is my guess. During the first episode, they'll probably mention this. That's my guess. And it'll continue on through episode 3-ish, is what I'm guessing. And on page 431, it will read, and King Aegon's overtures to Dalton Greyjoy of Pike had thus far failed to win the Iron Islands. So at this point, Iron Islands have not sided with anyone. They haven't sided with the Greens for sure. So clearly Otto's work to get the islands on Team Green did not work, and we'll probably again hear about this. By the end of episode 2 or 3, we will see Otto go on his hand with this quote, which is on page 431 in Fire and Blood. Summoning Sir Otto to the throne room, he tore the chain of office from his neck and tossed it to Sir Criston Cole. My new hand is a steel fist, he boasted. We are done writing letters. Here you can see Otto is out and Criston is in. At this point, Aegon is like bloodthirsty, basically. And as you can see, Dalton's actions, besides other things, affect the war greatly. Without Criston's becoming hand, Rook's Rust, for example, may never have happened, which entirely changes gears of the war. All right, let's get into the houses. So I know we're about 35 minutes in this, guys. I will try and speed up a little bit here. We got the Greyjoys. I'm going to need a quick beer break, though. Again, the Greyjoys are really the only house I will go into detail with for the Iron Islands. The Iron Islands will officially join the Blacks in late Season 2 or early Season 3, as we can see from this quote on page 453 in Fire and Blood. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to all, the dying Lord Jason is Bannerman. Sorry, guys, Jason Lannister dies, but who really cares? Fleets of longships from the Iron Islands fell upon the shores of the Lannisters' domain, led by Dalton Greyjoy of Pike. Hoarded by both claimants to the Iron Throne, the Red Kraken made his choice. His choice was the Blacks. His Ironmen could not hope to breach Casterly Rock. Once Joanna, the wife of Jason, had barred her gates, but he seized 3 to 4 of the ships, 3 out of every 4 ships in the harbor, sank the rest, then swarmed over the walls of Lannisport to sack the city, making off uncounted wealth, including Lord Jason's favorite mistress and natural daughters. So again, as you can see, the Westerlands is just south of the Iron Islands. All that green area is the Westerlands with the lion and, the gold and blue sigil, all that area. That is the Westerlands. So it's very easy access. And Lord Dalton was like, yeah, let's just side with the Blacks so we can destroy and take all the riches from the Greens. So that's kind of fun. The Iron Islands, this is my point, guys. The Iron Islands are less on the black side and more just a hindrance to the Greens, raiding up and down the Westerland shores, who are a part, again, of Team Green. As the war persists and ends, Dalton and the Iron Islands will be a huge hindrance to Westeros. But that is Season 4 material. Maybe we won't even see it in the show, so I won't get into that. The Iron Islands used to be a part of the Riverlands before Aegon's conquest, but once Aegon defeated Harren the Black at Harrenhal, he split the two kingdoms apart, leaving the Tullys in charge of the Riverlands, and the Greyjoys were picked by the Islanders as their lord. So that's how the Greyjoys became kings or lords of the Iron Island after Aegon's conquest. All right, we got the Harlaws of Harlaw. So they have the Reaper sigil, like the Grim Reaper sigil, weapon sigil. The thing's kind of sweet. I don't really know how to describe it. The Harlaws are arguably the second most powerful and strongest house in the Iron Islands. They live on the second largest island just east of Pike. Again, where it says Pike on this, guys, that's actually Harlaw, so I messed it up, so my bad, guys. They will play a huge role in replacing the next Lord of the Iron Islands after Dalton Greyjoy dies. He does die, but we might not even see that in the show. But again, I won't spoil too much either. And fun fact, when Balon Greyjoy decided to rise against King Robert I Baratheon, Lord Roderick had unsuccessfully attempted to dissuade him. In the resulting Greyjoy's rebellion, Roderick's 2 sons died in the sea battle off Fair Isle, as did Gwynessa's husband. So the Iron Throne proceeded to land ships on the island, and Harlaw was among the islands that saw the battle. So they were the Lord of Harlaw was like telling Balon to like not start this war with Robert, and this was like 289 AC. Black Tides, guys, the Black Tides of Black Tide. So they have the green and black sigil. They are off the island of Black Tide. Black Tides again are one of the more prominent houses. They will also play a huge role in replacing the next Lord of the Iron Islands. And after the Greyjoy Rebellion in 289 AC, Lord Blacktide's son Baelor was taken as a hostage for 8 years in the city of Old Town in the Reach. Just how, well, not really, because Theon was taken as a ward, but a lot of these lords in the Iron Islands after that battle with Robert in 289 AC, 8 years before Game of Thrones starts. A lot of them are taken as wards and prisoners. Upon his return, Baelor had converted to the mainland's Faith of the Seven. Yeah, so the Iron Islands don't believe in like the Faith of the Seven. I won't go into that. That's kind of off topic. We have the Orc Woods of Orkmont, which are the yellow background with the green trees. They are located on the island Orkmont, just south of Blacktide and north of Pike. The Orkwoods are one of the biggest supporters of Euron when he rises to power in A Feast for Crows. The Good Brothers, they are the red background with the black horn, live on Hammerhorn on Great Wick. Great Wick is the biggest island. They are the westernmost house of the Iron Islands and one of the more powerful houses, as well as one of the wealthiest houses. They derive their money from mining, so they most certainly are probably the wealthiest house on the of the islands, on any of the islands. We have then finally the Salt Cliffs of Saltcliffe, one of the smaller houses. They actually are the smallest island, and I will be pretty honest, I pretty much only included them because I thought they had a cool sigil. They have that white background with like the many snake-headed sigil. That sigil is pretty cool. The Salt Cliffs are actually, for the fun fact, are one of the first houses when Balon declares himself king of the Isles and North at the beginning of the War of the Five Kings. So that is the Iron Islands, guys. So we got the last two, and the last two are going to be neutral. It's going to be Dorne and the Triarchy, and I kind of represented the Triarchy as Essos. But let's. All right, guys, let's get into Dorne and the Triarchy. The Triarchy is going to be more on the second slide after this. Well, I should say the last slide after this. But we will get into Dorne. So the population and military size will not include the Triarchy, Lys, Myr, and Tyrosh. They would essentially double or more than that the population army size of what you see in the bottom left. Dorne is pretty average in terms of population, actually on the smaller side, around the size of the North in terms of population. A lot of this section will be general locations and fun facts in Dorne due to the fact that they had little influence in the dance, barring the Triarchy, who play a major factor, but at this point in time, the Triarchy is neutral. But trust me, they will not be neutral by the middle of season 2 and will definitely side with the Greens, and I will discuss that in their section in a little bit. Dorne currently is not part of the Seven Kingdoms. They stay neutral throughout the war and will not play a huge factor at all in the war. Aegon actually never managed to conquer it. In fact, in 4 AC, Aegon and his sister wives spent 6 years until 10 AC, called the First Dornish War, fighting to get Dorne into the Seven Kingdoms. Dorne won, Aegon gave up. Dorne does not actually come to the fold until 187, about 50 years after the dance. Actually 60 years after the dance, under Daeron II, the Good, through a marriage pact, meaning they were never conquered by the Targaryens. My theory as why the Dornish were so successful in fighting off the Targaryens is because of their history. The Dornish are mixed with the Rhoynish, who are water magic people from Essos, who fought off the Dragon Lords in Old Valyria hundreds to thousands of years before Aegon's conquest. Eventually, they could not fight them off anymore, and were forced to move away from their homeland in central Essos. They moved to Dorne. Nymeria married Morris Martell to combine the two factions. House Martell's name is technically called House Nymerius Martell, deriving from Nymeria. And again, there's a show on the works about this. George even confirmed it this week that there's a show about Nymeria, who brought the Rhoynish over in 700 BC to Dorne. Thus, the Dornish have historical experiences fighting the dragons. Kind of my theory why Aegon can never fight them off. Dorne is a principality due to the Rhoynish influence. They are not a kingdom and are ruled by a prince or a princess, so they're not ruled by a king or king. Ironically, because this is the whole reason the dance was fought over a woman being chosen over a man, in Dorne, the firstborn, regardless of sex, rules Dorne. So maybe Dorne has it right. Martells. Let's get into the Martells. This will be the longest of all these houses by far. I'll probably not skip, but kind of go fast with the other houses, guys. So the Martells are located in the farthest eastern region of Dorne at Sunspear. Their spear and sun sigil stems from the spear of House Martell and the sun from Nymeria and the Rhoynish, so it's a combined sigil. The Martell's words are unbowed, unbent, and unbroken, which I think are the coolest words of all any house. That's my opinion. Meaning they bow to no one, not even the Targaryens. In the show, they mention how Corin Martell enters into an alliance with the Free Cities, which is also in the books well before the dance begins. However, we can assume that alliance dwindled at least because the Dornish will stay entirely neutral throughout the war. I think we'll see that in the show. Unlike the Triarchy, who I've said before, will eventually side with the Greens. Otto tries to get the Martells on their side early on. This would be like early in season 2 when I hear about this. With this quote on page 429, Fire and Blood, we can demonstrate this. Sir Otto also reached out to Dorne, whose ruling prince, Corin Martell, had once warred against Prince Daemon and the Stepstones, but Prince Corin spurned his offer. Dorne has danced with dragons before, he said. I would sooner sleep with scorpions. That's an awesome quote. So this quote says a lot. It signifies that Corrin and Dorne will stay neutral, and that, like Dalton from the earlier section, rejecting Otto, Corrin rejecting Otto is another reason as why Aegon will get rid of it, which again shifts the war entirely. But let's get into the lesser houses now. So again, I'm gonna probably go through more just like general fun facts, like what their sigil looks like, their general location, because again, a lot of these houses probably will never even be mentioned in the dance besides the Martells. The Jordanes of the Tor, so they have that green and yellow sigil. They're about 250 miles northwest of Sunspear. Their words are kind of cool. It's let it be written. They kind of feel like the maesters of Dorne to me, since Dorne's not part of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't know. I feel like they're kind of like the maesters of Dorne. It's just my own, like, probably not right on that, but at some point, House Martell bent the knee to the Jourdain kings of the Tor. By the time of Nymeria's war, House Jourdain was among the bannermen of King Yorick Yornwood, and they fought against Lord Morse Martell and his many Roynish allies at that point. They lost, as I will get into the next section with the Yornwoods. They are the second most powerful house in Dorne. Their words are "We guard the way" because they guard the Bone Way. They're about 250 miles west, probably a little less, 200 miles west of the Tor. And they defend the Dorne similar to the Bloody Gate in the Val and the Bronze Gate in the Stormland. So there's kind of that gate theme that George has a little bit. In 3 separate kingdoms now we see that. Their seat, Yornwood, is the last fortress defending the Boneway, and it's reflected because their title is Warden of the Stoneway. Yornwoods, fun fact, unlike most Dornishmen, have a different look. They are stony, as Darren II would describe them, who tend to have blonde hair and blue eyes. So the Yornwoods and the Danes, I'll get into, look different. Most Dornish people look like they're kind of Spanish or Italian looking, but apparently the Yornwoods look like they're like Scandinavian, so I think that's kind of funny. And then I'll get into it. The Danes kind of look like Targaryens, but they're not. They're not Targaryens. They kind of look like them though. All right, let's get into the Wiles. The Wiles have a pretty cool sigil, and I'll get into the details of that sigil with the yellow background and the foot and the black snake. They are located as the farthest north house in Dorne. In all honesty, they are the first house you'd encounter if you invaded Dorne. However, they are located in a strategic location on the Boneway, next to an unnamed small river that flows into Dorne. And it's just harder to get them because they're in a weird, kind of awkward location. Their sigil, again, is a leg with a snake wrapped around it, and it leads to the fun fact. When Baelor the Blessed, he's in the description of my YouTube page. Love Baelor the Blessed because he was just a theocratic zealot, and I think it's kind of funny. When Baelor the Blessed, 30 years after the dance ended, went to save his cousin Aemon the Dragon Knight, one of the best Targaryen warriors, from the Wiles, he was forced to cross a pit of snakes to save his cousins. He went into a coma after this and almost died. So that'll be about 30 years after the dance. We're going to the Fowlers. So they have a pretty cool white background with the blue, what is that? Blue Hawk? I don't know, guys. So they're located about 100 miles west of, probably 150 to 200 miles actually, west of Yornwood. They hold the title of Wardens of the Prince's Pass. The Prince's Pass, historically called the Wide Way, is one of the principal overland routes from the Reach and the Stormlands to Dorne. It's one of the only ways you can kind of pass into Dorne smoothly. It is a gateway through the Red Mountains of Dorne. Also, the followers are not Andals. They are first men, like the Strongs, like the Starks, like anyone in the north, like the Blackwoods. But let's move on to the Blackmonts. Blackmonts are that yellow background of the vulture actually holding a baby. That's kind of dark, guys. Their seat is on the banks of the Torrentine in the Red Mountains of Dorne, which is about 100 miles west southwest of Skyreach. The Blackmounts have long fought against the Marcher Lords, the Dornish Marches to the north, so they're one of the primary people who fight against like the Tullys, or excuse me, the Tarleys, who have the green background with the red guy shooting the arrow. So like they're one of the primary people who defend Dorne against the Stormlands and the Reach. All right, the Danes. The Danes are pretty cool. So the Danes are they're kind of badasses. They're located west of the Red Mountains, around 100 miles south of Blackmount. They're actually pretty close to Old Town. They are considered to be a strong house with fearsome warriors. Again, they are the westernmost house in Dorne. Sword of the Morning is a title given to a Dane knight who is considered worthy of wielding the great sword Dawn, a blade said to be created from the heart of a falling star. And they also have a cadet branch called the Danes of High Hermitage, which is between the Blackmounts and the Danes, a small house. And as most of us know, Sir Arthur Dane, who you see in Game of Thrones fight Ned, and eventually Howland Reed kills him, which is kind of pretty significant. He's considered like the best knight basically ever in the Seven Kingdoms. Like even Barristan Selmy said that. He was probably the second best knight, maybe with Jaime Lannister. It's close. Because technically the Cleganes are not knights. Anyways, the Danes who originate in the western Red Mountains would be considered stony as well. So they have that different look. Their hair has been described as pale blonde, dark, and silver with a streak of black. So Danes have been served with blue or purple eyes. They've got like Valyrian features, like kind of Targaryen, but they're not. George has confirmed this. And this is a cool fun fact, guys. In 47 AC, so during Maegor, Lady Clarice Dane was suggested as a potential wife for King Maegor the First Targaryen. Grand Maester Bennifer wanted to detach Starfall from Dorne, which was still independent from the Seven Kingdoms. So basically, their plan was like, if you marry her, we can get the Danes of Starfall within the Seven Kingdoms and make Dorne smaller. And I actually have a quote for that on page 97 in Fire and Blood. It reads, Grand Maester Bennifer suggested a match with the proud and lovely Lady of Starfall, Carice Dane, in the hopes of detaching her lands and house from Dorne. All right, we're at the Porgiles, I think that's how you pronounce it. I've actually never heard it be pronounced, of Sandstone. They're a noble house located in the dunes of western Dorne. So they have the three scorpions in the red sigil. And actually, they're the 996th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, right before Jorah Mormont, before Jon Snow becomes Lord Commander, was actually a Corgyle. So that's kind of a cool little fact. All the way south, they move all the way north. The Ulers of Hellholt. All right. So they're going to be more significant in my Aegon's Conquest video, so I won't go into a ton of detail, but their keep, the Hellholt, is in the middle of the Dornish desert off the river Brimstone, and they are reputed to be impulsive and unpredictable. A Dornish saying is half of the Ulers are half mad and the other half are worse. Reminds me of the saying, and this kind of reminds me of the saying, madness and greatness are two sides of the same coin. Every time a new Targaryen is born, the gods toss the coin in the air and the world holds its breath to see how it will land. So that's a Targaryen saying, kind of like half crazy, because like half of them are kind of crazy and then half of them are, pretty successful kings. It's a little more complex than that, but it's just a saying. And again, Queen Rhaenys, so this is the fun fact that I'll get into my Aegon's Conquest video. Queen Rhaenys, the sister wife of Aegon, actually dies at Hellholt in 10 AC during the Dornish Wars with her dragon Meraxes. After that, Aegon and Visenya burned the crap out of Dorne, which was known as the Dragon's Wrath. So again, I'll go into more detail with that in my next video. Then finally, misspellings, sorry guys, we have the Vaiths of the Red Dune, or the Vaiths of Vaith. Their seat, also named Vaith, is placed on the river with the same name. West of Vaith are the deep sands of Dorne. The head of House Vaith has the title Lord of the Red Dunes. Neither their arms nor words appear in the books, but according to a source. Their blazon, their sigil, is with 3 black leopards standing in a yellow pile on Orne. Isilvase was the 3rd mistress of King Aegon IV Targaryen. King Aegon IV Targaryen was by far the worst Targaryen king, worse than the Mad King. Started massive problems in the Targaryen family and kingdom. I won't go into that, but let's get into the Triarchy. So the Triarchy is going to be a little different, guys. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but so I saved the best for last, guys. The Triarchy, the 3 free cities of the 9 free cities. So Triarchy are really interesting because, again, they'll be neutral for about half of season 2, and then they'll play a huge factor when they side with Team Greens. The Triarchy is composed of 3 free cities. Tyrosh, as you see, is the furthest west. Myr and Lys, respectively, in which they encircle an area called the Disputed Lands. It has long been contested between the free cities of Lys, Myr, and Tyrosh, often involving skirmishes and small wars. The free cities, also called the 9 free cities, are a group of 9 independent city-states in Westeros, in western Essos, so Essos, located west of the Dothraki Sea and the Painted Mountains, and northwest of the Valyrian Peninsula. The cities included Bravos, Lorath, Norvos, Pentos, Volantis, Kohar, and of course Tyrosh, Myr, and Lys. But again, the Triarchy is just composed of Tyrosh, Myr, and Lys. In Westeros, the Triarchy was known as the Kingdom of the 3 Daughters, or more rudely in Fire and Blood, the Kingdom of the 3 Whores. The Triarchy actually started in 96 AC, so at the end of Jaehaerys the First's reign, before about 7-ish years before Viserys becomes king, and they are eventually dissolved from a civil war in 1830 AC. I won't go into that civil war too much. I'm just going to focus on the background of the Triarchy and what they will do during season 2. During the end of Jaehaerys First in 96 AC, Tyrosh, Lys, and Myr ended their strife and got rid of Volantis from the Disputed Lands, defeating all of Volantis in the Battle of the Borderland, and forging the Eternal Alliance called the Triarchy. The Myrish Prince Admiral Kragas Drohar, who we saw, excuse me, guys, when Daemon killed him in episode 3, led an invasion of the Stepstones, clearing out the pirate dens of the island and making trade safer in Narrow Sea. Seven Kingdoms initially approved the Triarchy's action, but Kragas and his co-admirals became greedy with their tolls. The Lyseni women, girls, and comely boys to bring back to their pillow houses, including Lady Johanna Swan, niece to the Lord of Stonehelm. So basically, they become very aggressive, and then Westeros, which we see Corlys and Daemon are like, yeah, this is not cool anymore. You guys are causing us great financial trouble because we can't trade freely. So they start that war. So moving on, obviously Prince Daemon and Corlys support Rhaenyra. So early on in the fighting, the Valyrian fleet blockaded the Gullet in Blackwater Bay. Sir Otto Hightower and the leader of the Greens, Aegon, reached across the Narrow Sea to the Triarchy, which he knew would be an enemy of Daemon. He hoped to persuade them to move against Corlys the Sea Snake and break his blockade. The High Council of the Triarchy even met in Tyrosh and chose to accept Otto's offer of alliance. So Otto will actually send them basically like a letter, but it'll take him a while because they each have like 30 leaders. So it's like 90 leaders have to meet together and make a decision. So they'll be slow, kind of like the North. But eventually, a combined fleet of 90 Myrish, Lynese, and Tyroshi warships under the banners of the 3 Daughters, commanded by Triarchy's Admiral Shirako Lohar of Lys, who we will see in season 2. I believe they changed her. She'll be a female in the show. Swept from the Stepstones, bending their oars from the Gullet. En route, they intercepted the Gay Abandon. So the Gay Abandon is a ship which was carrying 2 of Rhaenyra's sons, Prince Aegon and Viserys. So basically, Rhaenyra sends Aegon and Viserys off to Essos, thinking they'll be safer in Pentos because they have that relation. Daemon has a relationship with the Prince of Pentos, so they're gonna like store them there, keep them there away from the war. But basically, the Triarchy, led by Shirako Lohar, will like seize them. But actually, Aegon escapes atop Stormcloud, his dragon. I don't know if we'll see this in the show. That'd be really cool. This would be around probably the end of episode 4. They would show this. But again, Viserys was taken as a captive, and again, Viserys being taken as a captive is super important. Okay, just always remember Viserys II. All right, that's all I'll say. Once the news of the fleet's presence in the Gullet reached Dragonstone, Prince Viserys Valerion swept down on Vermax and was soon joined by other dragons. In the resulting Battle of the Gullet, which we will see in most likely Season 2, Episode 5 or Season 2, Episode 6, the prince met his demise. So unfortunately, Jacaerys will die in the season, guys. He'll die fighting off the Triarchy in right near Driftmark in Dragonstone in the Narrow Sea. The fleet of the Three Daughters avoided Dragonstone, and they'll eventually sack Spicetown and High Tide on the Valerian Isle of Driftmark, but took such heavy losses that it played no further part in the war. So basically, they had like 5 dragons, like black dragons, like Silverwing, Vermithor, Sheepstealer, Vermax. Forgetting one more, but they basically Sea Smoke. They basically like destroyed the Triarchy ships. So only 28 of the 90 ships, most of them Lysini. Again, Lys will be important, so remember Viserys and Lys. I'm not going to spoil anything, but remember that. They returned home. So after that, the Triarchy's out of it. And that's basically it. I don't want to go too much more into it, but yeah, basically the Triarchy will capture Viserys II, the little brother of Jace and the youngest son of Rhaenyra and Daemon, and that'll start a conflict between the Triarchy and the Blacks, and obviously the Triarchy on Team Green. But that is all I got today, guys. Look out tomorrow. I'm gonna post a video of my either 3 or 5 major predictions of the first episode, and I'll be doing that before each season 2 episode. So 8 weeks of that. I'll make 3 major predictions. Again, they'll be spoilery, and I could get them wrong. And then each week maybe we'll play like a little drinking game or something. If I get 3 of 3 wrong, I have to chug a beer here on camera or something like that. But I'll think of that. But look for those videos. And in the meantime, I'm working on my Aegon's Conquest Geography video, which will hopefully come out after Season 2 in August or September. So thanks, guys, and see you next time.